and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Friday. It has been a full and busy week here on the program. And so today, the last day, it's Friday. And, like all of you, well, unlike all of you, I don't get to really take it easy on the last day of the week. No, on Fridays, I put this program at grave risk because it's Open Line Friday. That's right, my friends. Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. This is the day where we talk about whatever you want to talk about. Let's see, if I have the phone lines open during the week, you kind of have to talk about what's on my mind. I mean, after all, you watch this program to hear what I'm thinking about the day's events. Not on Friday. On Friday, I open up the phone lines for the entire program, the entire 2 hours. So whatever it is that has been irritating you, that's stuck in your craw, that you want to talk about, well, then we're going to go ahead and do it. So the phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. That will get you directly to this desk. I probably ought to go find an old red telephone so I can put it on the desk right here. Or any old telephone. It'd be red, of course, if the governor wants to call me or anybody else wants to, find out what's really going on. But anyway, today we don't need the red phone. All you do is you call the phone number 307-374-8989, and you can run the program. It's it's this part of the show that really freaks out Agent 29. He just doesn't like the uncertainty of it. Because you take a phone call and you have no idea what you're going to get, and I kind of enjoy that. It keeps me on my toes, as it were. Not Agent 29. No, surprises are definitely not his bag. I told you yesterday that we'd be back in the downtown studio. Turns out that Ken did not get enough done on his project yesterday. We haven't told you, but he's been remodeling a house for a friend, or at least, putting on an addition or something. And he didn't get as much as work done as he thought he was going to. And so we are here in the original bunker, the original Cowboy State Politics studio. That's okay. We got plenty to talk about. So if you want to call, 307-374-8989. Let's get to it. There's a blockbuster jobs report out. And, it's on Fridays, these things come out a lot. I mean, it's usually late Thursday night, early Friday. That's why they call it the Friday news dump. It's intentionally set up that way because most people are getting ready for the weekend. They're done with work and probably not going to pay any attention to what's going on. And so, anything that's going to be, good or bad, gets pushed off till Friday. Well, today there's a great jobs report out, and it's in a piece from Breitbart. Blockbuster jobs report. America created 119,000 jobs in September. And I quote, the U.S. economy added 119,000 jobs in September, according to the Bureau or the Department of Labor Thursday. Economists had forecast payrolls to expand by 50,000. The jobs report for September was released Thursday after being delayed several weeks by the government shutdown. And, you would think that the government shutdown would have dampened this jobs report, but not so. The October report, which would have normally been released on the first Friday of the month, is likely never to be produced because of the shutdown during the week in which the data would have been collected. The November report is currently scheduled to be released on December 16th. That's actually my sister Christy's birthday. So if you feel so inclined, go ahead and send her all sorts of gifts to the Cowboy State Politics studio, and I'll make sure that she gets them. The unemployment rate edged up to 4.4% from 4.3% as the labor force participation rate increased this month. The number of Americans with jobs expanded by 251,000, while the number of Americans looking for work but unable to find a position rose by 219,000. Payroll gains were the highest in consumer, and this is the key statistic that I look for. Not so much that people get jobs; that's absolutely a good thing. There is value in work. It doesn't really matter what type of work it is, but there's value in it. But the statistic that I look at is payroll gains. Are employers increasing wages? Are people that are working able to make more? Because during the Biden administration, I know that prices were artificially increased and all of that, but it skews all of the statistics. And the only time that you can really depend upon these statistics is when a Republican is in office. Because a lot of the people that collect all the data are rabid Democrats that have been stuck in the bureaucracy or concreted in the bureaucracy, whatever you want to call it, for many, many years. And so if there's a Democrat in office, those numbers are always going to be inflated. And we saw that during the last administration. And if you recall, a report would come out and it would be fantastic, right? We've added 500 million jobs. Incredible. There's only 330 million people in the country, but we've added 500 million. And then a couple months would go by and there would be a report issued. Well, the labor statistics that we issued last month have been revised downward. And so it's another one of those hit and run news stories that I was telling you about yesterday, that the report comes out, everybody's excited about it. And then later on, they can issue a change to the report. So, well, it's been revised downward. And, most people don't pay any attention to that because the buzz has already gone out of that report. That is, unless it are the crime statistics that were released during the latter year of the Biden administration. People got fed up with, all of these skewed statistics so much that they didn't really mean anything. And it was the crime statistics that really got voters fired up. If you remember during the presidential campaign, that turned out to be a big issue, that the FBI had been, I don't know if fabricating is the right word, but they weren't issuing the right crime statistics. And that became a big issue in the campaign. Let's see here. Back to the piece. Manufacturing employment fell by 6,000 and is unchanged from a year ago. Durable goods manufacturers have added 1,000 jobs year over year. And even after a 4,000 jobs cut in September. Construction added 19,000 jobs while after contracting in the previous 2 months compared to a year ago. Construction jobs are up about 30,000. So that's where one of the big, huge gains was at. Apparently, we're building a lot of stuff. Average hourly earnings rose by 9 cents an hour, or 0.2%, to $36.67 in September over the past 12 months. Average hourly earnings have increased 3.8%, beating the 3% rate of inflation. And that's another thing that you have to look at, that, you might hear a statistic say, well, wages have gone up 3%. Well, you automatically want to look and see what the inflation rate is year over year. because maybe that raise will be consumed by the increase in inflation or the decrease in the value of the dollar, because that's generally, well, that is what inflation is. A good way to think about it is if you had a gold dollar, a gold dollar from 100 years ago, let me back up. I'm screwing up the metaphor. Let's go back in time about 100 years ago, and you had a gold dollar in your pocket. What would that coin be worth? Well, I mean, probably buy you 2 pretty nice suits, get you the whole outfit, and including a very nice chapeau. Now, fast forward 100 years to today, and you have that same gold dollar. What would it buy? Well, it would probably buy the same thing. 2 pretty nice suits, and maybe you could get a nice hat. You see, it's not the value of the gold that has changed. It's the value of the dollar. When the dollar decreases in value, the value of commodities or commodities increases. Those things that continue to retain value. So, gold, silver coins, guns are another one of those that tend to appreciate in value. And a lot of other stuff generally doesn't. Alcohol is one of those things that goes up in value. So, if the crap is going to hit the oscillating unit, you need gold and silver, probably some booze to trade with, and a couple of other things. All right. So on today's program, I just went through the new jobs numbers, and I think those are important because there is a lot of doom and gloom if you watch the news. Like right now, they're talking about an anti-socialism measure on the floor of the House. And then previous, it was the Democrat. Did you see that stupid Democrat video of you can choose to disobey an unlawful order? Did you see all those Democrats doing that? Well, that's an attempt to get the military to carry the resistance of the Democrats into their sphere. Well, the truth is that all of those people on the video, they know darn good and well that it is the commander-in-chief who is in charge of the military. And, if there is an illegal order that's issued, which is, and this is the rub of it, that if an illegal order is issued, it doesn't matter what it is, that's a crime, right? It's illegal. It's against the law. And so that's already something that you're going to get in trouble with. What the Democrats are trying to do is to get members of the military to disobey lawful orders. And in their own, judgment, disobey. Say, well, that one's not lawful. I'm just not going to obey it. But it's just another attempt from the Democrats to carry their resistance of the Orange Man into the military sphere, as if there wasn't that, as if that didn't exist already during the first Trump administration. I mean, we all remember Alexander Vindman, who was the whistleblower that went to Congress and told a whole bunch of bull crap stories. But the Democrats are trying to gin up resistance in the military. So that's what that's all about. Another thing that you probably didn't know about me, I've had to put on my glasses this morning. One of the many joys of being a diabetic is sometimes the diabetes messes with your eyes. And this morning, man, I am struggling. So I thought, well, I better do the program with my glasses on. It's funny. Like, I don't have poor vision. It's last time I had an eye appointment, which admittedly was a couple of years ago. So I've got an appointment for one coming up. It's just evidently it's pretty hard to get in to see a optometrist in Sheridan. But my last eye appointment, the doc says, your eyes aren't bad. He said, you've got pretty good up close vision. And he said, your long distance vision is pretty good, but it's kind of like in the middle. So for example, like right now, reading this piece of paper, it's pretty easy. My glasses like magnify everything. But if I look at the screen, things are a little blurry. And so the doctor's like, well, you could pay me a whole bunch of money and I could make you bifocals and we could do all that. Or you could just deal with it. You could put on your reading glasses when you have to. Just deal with the fuzziness later. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. I'm a conservative, so I can deal with it. But today, my friends, it's reading glass day. So, other good statistics that are coming out from the Blaze. Trump celebrates a historic crime drop in hostile sanctuary city after the federal blitz. And we're referring to Operation Midway Blitz in Chicago. One of the most publicized deportation operations in the country turned 2 months old earlier this week, and leaders have begun to celebrate its success. Weird. When you put cops on the street, crime goes down. And it's, this is another big Democrat lie that deterrence doesn't work. Have you heard that? Well, we got the prisons are too full, and we're just putting people in prison that don't deserve it. And of course, Mamdani in New York, crime is really a social problem. But you can't ignore the reality of what's happened in Washington D.C. and what is happening in Chicago. That if the prospect of you getting caught for committing a crime is pretty high, chances are you're not going to commit the crime. It's no more complicated than Rudolph Giuliani's broken windows theory. And again, this is another one that you've probably heard, but his theory is you always fix the broken windows. And the reason that you do is if you have a broken window in a building and a bunch of hoodlums, ne'er-do-well teenagers or other criminals walk by and they see a broken window, the likelihood that they're going to throw a rock and break another window is pretty high. However, if you fix all of the windows and none of them are broken and those same individuals walk by, they're going to see a building where everything is fixed and the likelihood of them committing a crime actually goes down. Well, that's not very complicated at all. And so the same holds true for street-level crime, which is what Trump was attempting and is reducing in Chicago. From the Blaze, Operation Midway Blitz, one of the most publicized deportations in the country, turned 2 months old earlier this week, and leaders have begun to celebrate its success. In a press release on Wednesday, the Department of Homeland Security announced a plummet in crime rates since September when the operation began. It's common sense. When you remove the worst of the worst criminal illegal aliens from our country, crime rates plummet. According to a press release, Chicago homicides are down 16%, robberies are down 41%, carjackings are down 48%, and transit crime is down 20%. Notably, shootings have dropped 35% as well, the lowest in 4 years, no matter what J.B. Pritzker says. For decades, sanctuary policies exacerbated the crime crisis in Chicago. Now, thanks to our brave DHS law enforcement, Chicago is experiencing a historic drop in violent crime, said Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin. It's common sense. When you remove the worst of the worst criminal illegal aliens from our country, crime goes down. Commander-at-Large of the U.S. Border Patrol, Gregory Bovino, who has bravely spearheaded many of the missions despite assassination threats, posted a photo of Border Patrol agents in front of the Bean in Chicago saying, the U.S. Border Patrol is dedicated to making Americans' cities safer, one deportation at a time. President Trump took to Truth Social to celebrate the success, quote, I am proud to announce that Chicago, Illinois, despite all of the radical opposition and obstruction we have from the mayor and the governor, has seen car theft, shootings, robberies, violent crime, and everything else drop dramatically, Trump said. Looking to the future, he added, as we ramp up more assets, these numbers will continue to drop. And he goes on. It's despite the Illinois radical Democrat leadership and the constant violent left-wing terrorism against ICE officers, we're continuing to prosecute crime. And we have to. That is one of the very, very few jobs of the government, is to, have a police force and enforce the law. And it is Democrats. And for the life of me, I can't imagine why any elected official in their right mind wouldn't want crime to go down. And there's only one logical reason why they wouldn't, is that if crime rates are high, that there is an increased need for social services. So, entitlements, right? More, if there are fewer businesses open because of crime, well, then people are going to have to rely on SNAP benefits, welfare, those sorts of things. But if crime is low and business can prosper and expand and hire people and not have the threat of being robbed or shot or killed, then business will increase. And that's just one of those things that Democrats refuse. Oh, there he is, the mayor on the TV in the studio. Johnson calls train attack in Chicago an isolated incident. Apparently, a repeat offender set a woman on fire in Chicago. That's just an isolated incident, according to Brandon Johnson. But it's this is not a complicated thing. When you enforce the law, crime goes down, and it's this is exactly the problem with Democrats. Is none of them really have their constituents' best interests in mind. It is always pushing the Democrat agenda. That's why J.B. Pritzker was on Bret Baier, and let me see if I can find that video for you, where he was telling Bret Baier, "Well, no. You see, crime is actually down. It's not up. It's down." Let's see if I can find it for you. But that's the narrative that Democrats have to use. That don't pay any attention to what you see in front of your face. Don't believe your lying eyes. You just believe us. Here we go. I found it. Okay, so this is J.B. Pritzker on Special Report with Bret Baier on Fox News. Just listen to him. This is a great example of don't believe your lying eyes. Here you go.
Why does Chicago have the highest murder rate of all the big cities?
Well, we are not in the top 30 in terms of our murder rate. Indeed,
the murder rate
we're not in the top 30.
It has been cut in half over the last 4 years, and every year it's gone down by double digits. And if you look at all of the violent crime over the last 4 years,
here's a map.
They've all gone down.
U.S. cities, 17.47 per 100,000 population. Chicago is number one over Philadelphia, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, Phoenix, Los Angeles, New York, and San Diego.
What I'm explaining to you
now,
is
you're
when
talking
you want
about
to fight
violent
crime. Look, you can pull statistics up.
No, these are murders.
I'm explaining to you that our murder rate has been cut in half. And very importantly, Brett, and you got to hear this, very importantly, we've been doing the things that are necessary to bring crime down, right? We've invested in community violence interruption. We've invested in police.
That's social workers. Yes. So, don't believe your lying eyes. Believe me, I'm J.B. Pritzker, and I'm telling you the truth. Democrats hardly ever tell you the truth. And, and they have to continue on that narrative because that's what they started with, my friends, that, crime is down in Chicago and don't believe anything that comes out of the Trump administration. Because, and here's the other part of this, is they can't give Trump a win. Their Democrats are it must be in their DNA that, one of those genes, ancient genes that crops up is that when there's a successful Republican administration in the White House, Democrats are incapable of admitting that they're actually doing a good job. And, great example from J.B. Pritzker. Don't believe your lying eyes, my friends. Crime is not going down. That all the murders that happened last week that didn't happen this week. Well, that's just don't believe it. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, I have become increasingly, increasingly worried about a particular vein of rhetoric that I'm hearing more often now than I used to. And, it was a common refrain years ago with Republicans that, if Democrats want a revolution, they want to change this country, let them go ahead. Guess who's got all the guns? All the Republicans do. And it was kind of a joke at the, years ago with among us conservatives that the Democrats can do whatever they want to do. But when it all comes down to it, they're the folks that have been advocating for less guns, restricting the right of gun ownership. Because, of course, if you're going to install a communist regime, you can't have your constituents be heavily armed to the teeth, because that's the point of the Second Amendment, is that you can defend your country, your city, your county against tyranny. Tyranny protection is the point of the Second Amendment. It doesn't have anything to do with hunting or recreation or any of that, or, it is all about protection from tyranny. Well, Joe Rogan, and I probably should watch Joe Rogan. He's got the biggest podcast in the world, but I'm just not a fan. I don't find his analysis to be all that compelling. And, occasionally I'll see a videos, a video bite or videos clip of something Joe Rogan has said, and I'll watch it. But I'm not one of those people that makes a habit out of watching it. But he says reaction to the Charlie Kirk assassination shows that the U.S. is close to a civil war. Now, I completely disagree with this. I don't think that we're that close to a civil war. I think that we have always had radicals in our country, and you can look at any historical age, any historical time period, and you will have had radicals. For example, we've got a lot of these holidays that, we all take off work for, Labor Day, May Day, those things. All of those were started by pretty radical people. Labor Day, it was started by a communist, believe it or not. So I don't think that there's an increase in the number of radicals. I do think that they've had some successes where historically they probably haven't had. So, I'm not one of these people that believes that we are close to a civil war. However, when you got a guy on the most popular podcast in the world talking about this, well, maybe we should pay attention. So this is a piece from November 12th, so it's last week. But here's what it says. Rogan appeared to be shocked at some people's reactions to Charlie Kirk's death. I was pretty shocked at that myself. Even in Wyoming, there were, I saw a lot of stuff. In fact, I've got a story coming on the podcast, which, again, it's happening down in Goshen County. It's kind of an update to a story I did before. And there's a guy here in Sheridan who posted some pretty nasty things. Why is it always teachers that do this sort of stuff? Anyway, Joe Rogan said that the reaction of many to the assassination of Charlie Kirk persuaded him to think that the U.S. is closer to a civil war than he previously believed. Rogan made the comments on a Tuesday edition of his incredibly popular podcast while talking to guest Brian Redban. Quote, after the Charlie Kirk thing, I'm like, we might be at like 7. This might be like step 7 on the way to a bona fide civil war. Charlie Kirk gets shot and people are celebrating like, whoa. You want people to die that you disagree with? Rogan said. Where are we right now on the scale of civil war? Where are we? Are we at a 7? Because I thought we were like a 5. I thought we were at a 4 or 5. Well, it's not that long of a soundbite, so let me go ahead and play it for you, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. Let's see here. Here we go. Ken, you need to hurry up and get back so I don't have to do this myself. But here you go. Here's Joe Rogan.
Charlie Kirk gets shot and people are celebrating. Like, whoa. You want people to die that you disagree with? Like, where are we right now on the scale of 1 to civil war? Where are we? Are we at 7? Because I thought we were at 5. I thought we were like 4 or 5. But after the Charlie Kirk thing, I'm like, we might be like 7. This might be like step 7 on the way to a bona fide civil war. As soon as you start like regular people celebrating somebody getting murdered in front of their wife and kid on television in front of the whole world, as soon as you celebrate that, like, man, you're in dark territory. You're in dark territory. And if the worst thing you could say about that guy is that he said some things I disagree with, and you're celebrating that he got shot in the neck in front of the world, whoa. And you work at an insurance company? This is nuts. And you thought it was okay to say that on Instagram? This is nuts. Like, what are you guys on? Like, what's happening here?
Exactly right. So, and a lot of the rhetoric that I've seen has been pretty shocking. Folks, teachers, we've had a number of those. And why is it always teachers? But people celebrating somebody's death with, that they disagree with. Now, we saw a lot about, and I've mentioned several times on the program that even in places like Sheridan, Wyoming, I mean, the last No Kings protest, there was somebody holding a sign that said, let's give them 1793 France, which, if you know anything about history, that's when the guillotines started getting rolled out and heads started rolling. And so there are radicals. I think that is undeniable. There has always been radicals. And I don't think that the number has increased. I just think that their willingness to be vocal about it has increased. And it definitely is a commentary on where we are as a society, that apparently some people think it's okay to, to talk about super violent things and killing people just because we disagree with them politically. However, this is not unlike times we've had in the past. John Lennon was shot, JFK was shot, Martin Luther King Jr. was shot, Bobby Kennedy was shot. We have had assassinations in our past. But the question is, are we any closer to civil war? I think that on the empathy scale, that we have moved backward. I think that there are a lot of people, and I'm going to chalk it up to folks on the left. I don't see Republicans being very vocal on social media saying our opponents need to get 2 bullets like the new attorney general in Virginia. I don't see that coming from the Republican side. And if I'm wrong, please correct me. I would definitely cover that story. But I think that the violence and the calls for violence are almost, not all, almost exclusively coming from the left. And they have to, because, and God, it feels like every episode I talk about this, that, the left, the communists, the socialists, they can't have any opposition to their plans. That's why communist regimes in the past have had to silence all dissent, that you can't have any dissent, because if you do, that might create doubt. It might, you can't have, one of the big things that communist and socialist regimes, even in Venezuela, have all done is close churches, jailed pastors. Because if people start believing in God, well, and instead of the state, that is a threat to their regime. Because it's just one more way that the vapidness, that I don't even know the word, but what I'm trying to say is that the lack of efficacy of the left is shown. And, you can't have any dissent. So, a lot of these killings, one is done by radicals. I mean, if you're going to shoot anybody, you're not exactly right in the head. Doesn't mean you're not a whack job, crazy political radical. It just also means that you're not right in the head. But I don't think that we have any more than we have in any other age. I just think that we're being more vocal about it. That those folks who are willing to commit violence have always been there. And it's just that now they seem to be taking the masks off. And a great example of this, and I talked about it yesterday on the show, is that years ago, if you're a politician and you mentioned the word socialism, you were most definitely going to have problems getting reelected. Now, if you live in a Democrat stronghold like New York, I mean, Zoran Mamdani, he came right out and said, I'm a democratic socialist. But I think that those are exceptions to the rule. New York is the country's biggest city, but it is one state and it is one city in a very, very large country. And so I don't really think that a lot of that is spilling over. So let me just finish up this piece on Joe Rogan before I move on. So let's see here. The conservative activist was shot and killed. All right, that's Charlie Kirk. Okay, yeah, so I guess we did finish that up. Now, there has been a number of organizations, that after Charlie Kirk's assassination, took it upon themselves to, pay tribute to Charlie Kirk. They either had a moment of silence or they held a vigil or something. And one of those was the NFL. The NFL said it was a league decision to make the announcement, and this is back in September, but I just thought I'd bring it up again. The National Football League chose to honor the memory of Charlie Kirk ahead of its Thursday night football game between the Packers and the Commanders, which they need to go back to being called the Washington Redskins, by the way. The video of the announcement at Lambeau Field was also broadcast to the viewers of the game on Amazon Prime after an intro by Carissa Thompson. And I did go look at that video clip, but it's not that great. It's only a couple of seconds and really doesn't show you that much. I mean, you can hear the announcement at Lambeau Field, but that's about all you got. Now, it grew widespread acrimony from those on the left. One particular response on Twitter was, "I'm sorry, but what the F are you all doing? The National Football League asks that you please join us in a moment of silent reflection following the murder of Charlie Kirk, the announcer said. The NFL condemns all violence in our communities, and it will take all of us to stop the hate. That's absolutely true. And I don't know of anybody anybody in their right mind anyway, that would disagree with that. While many appreciated the moment to honor the activists, some on the left spewed their rancor onto social media. Quote, not for 9/11, not for children murdered at school, but for a regular guy, not even military, that spewed nothing but hate shielded behind the Bible. I thought the politics weren't allowed in this sport, reads one response, and it had right around 1,000 likes. Okay, so if a moment of silence isn't warranted, then why then did we have such a gigantic outpouring of support for Charlie Kirk's family after that happened? Well, I mean, why? I mean, you saw vigils across the world. Why? Because Charlie Kirk was a normal guy who decided that he needed to do something. And so he went to college campuses and he did the one thing that the left can't stand. And that is to have an open and honest debate with people with whom you disagree, to be able to sit down and have a logical discussion. And the other thing that the left hated about him is that he showed the vapidness of their ideas, showed them, like revealed them for what they are in front of, the group of people that the left has to capture if they want their movement to continue. They have to have the young people. And so Charlie Kirk's mission was to go there and just speak the truth. Hey, let's have a debate. Let's engage in a battle of ideas. I'll lay my ideas on the table. You do the same, and we'll find out which one of them is true. And that is why the left hated him. It's also why the left has such a visceral reaction to anybody who liked Charlie Kirk or who extolled the, Charlie Kirk's mission or anything like that. Oh man. Well, I've gone way over the break. So let's go take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll continue with Open Line Friday. Hopefully we'll get some calls, but we'll do that in just a second. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. It's Open Line Friday. I'm David Iverson, your illustrious host. doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by God himself. Thank you for watching the program, my friends. I truly appreciate it. And thank you for listening to the podcast. That the one about the governor went absolutely bonkers. If you haven't listened to it, the podcast is called Gordon's Budget is Legalized Theft. And I had one comment, probably my favorite comment on it is, so, Dave, I see you're not exactly agreeing with the governor. No, I'm not, because that budget is probably the most dishonest thing I've seen all year. But there again, we are talking about Mark Gordon, so it's not like he really tells the truth a whole heck of a lot anyway. Also, the first issue of the Outrider, which is the newsletter of Cowboy State Politics, was a resounding success. I got a lot of comments on it. Thank you for sending those in. If you haven't signed up for the newsletter, first, what the heck is wrong with you? Second, if you haven't, go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. And the very first thing you'll see is a pop-up that says join our newsletter. And I need to go update it with the Outrider name on it. That's something that the lovely Christine came up with, and I really like it. So anyway, put your email address in there on the pop-up, hit submit, and it'll send me an email, and I will make sure that you get the latest edition of the newsletter, which will go out. I kind of like doing it every Thursday morning. We'll do a wrap up of everything that's happened on the program, both the live show and the podcast, and some of my commentary. So anyway, the first issue is out, and if you don't have a copy of it, it means that you haven't signed up for the newsletter yet. So go to the website, do that, and feel free to forward it to any of your pals. And if you have had it forwarded to you by somebody that already is smart enough to sign up, just kidding, that's already taken advantage of the podcast, just reply, send me an email. My address is on it, and you can put subscribe in the subject line, and I'll get it, and I'll throw you on the list, and you'll get a copy of it. So sign up for the newsletter. Also, there's a lot of stuff that's going to be happening real quick on the podcast. I'm working really hard to expand the program. And there's a number of places that you can watch Cowboy State Politics. One of those is the OBBM Network, and it's grassroots TV. There's a ton of different shows that you could watch on there. It is hyper localized, and there's even stuff from Wyoming. My new pal AJ Richards from over in Cody, he has a podcast that's published on there, and you can also find Cowboy State Politics. So that's the OBBM Network. So this program is already becoming syndicated. And it's super exciting for me. When I started this show, I never thought that it would become as big as it has. And that's all thanks to you. So thank you for watching. So immigration. There's a new piece out, and I've got it buried somewhere in the stack of stuff this morning, about the Maryland man. Apparently he's a pedophile too. I mean, the guy, he checks all of the criminal boxes. But the question I think we should be asking, and maybe we've been asking the wrong one this whole time, is that it's not necessarily a problem with immigration. We want people to come to this country. If you're one of those people that lives in a poor country and you want to make a better life for yourself, well, there's a way that you can come to the United States and make a life for you. And so the real danger isn't immigration. We should be in favor of it the right way, not illegal immigration. That is, you should apply to come here, get the visa, go through that process, become a U.S. citizen. But it's that last part that's the real issue. It's a refusal to become an American. And there are a lot of left-wing hosts, and I'm not even going to go search for the video, but there's many on the left that say that America doesn't have a culture. That is absolutely wrong. America has been, since its very inception, a melting pot. That you move from another country, you immigrate from another country, and you bring the best things. And we take the best things from your culture, and we add them to our own in this giant melting pot, and it becomes the American culture. But the real danger is when you refuse to do that, and instead you focus on multiculturalism. There's a great piece from The Blaze that talks about this, and let me just go through it. Quote, it is time to talk honestly about what is happening inside America's rapidly growing Muslim community. In city after city, large pockets of newcomers are choosing to build insulated enclaves rather than enter a broader American culture. That trend is accelerating, and the longer that we ignore it, the harder it becomes to address. As Texas goes, and some believe this, I tend to think that you should put Wyoming in there. But anyway, as Texas goes, so goes America. And as America goes, so goes the free world. America has always welcomed people of every faith and people from every corner of the world. But the deal has never changed. You come here and you join the American family. You're free to honor your traditions. In fact, we celebrate them. Keep your faith. But you must embrace the Constitution as the supreme law of the land. You melt into the shared culture that allows all of us to live side by side. But it is the Constitution that binds this country together. And when you become a citizen, you take an oath to that Constitution, not and you forswear any oh man, what do I want to call it? Any allegiance. There we go. It's the pledge. Why did I have such a problem with that word? Anyway, you forswear any allegiance to any other country in favor of this one. So across the country, however, this bargain is being rejected by Islamist communities that insist on building a parallel society within it with its own rules, its own boundaries, and its own vision of how life should be lived. The culture of Sharia law and Islamism is in direct opposition to the Constitution and America. Now, Texas is illustrating this trend. The state now has roughly 330 mosques, which I don't have a problem with mosques. There's one over in Gillette. I don't know that there's one here in Sheridan. But in our country, you have the right to practice your religion, whatever that religion may be, so long as it's actually a religion and it's not a criminal one. But you can practice it. That's guaranteed by God. It's given to you by God and guaranteed to you through the Constitution. But at least 48 of those mosques in Texas were built in just the last 24 months. The Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex alone has around 200 Islamic centers. Houston has another 100 or so, and many of these communities have no interest in blending into American life. This is not the same as past waves of immigration. Irish, Italian, Korean, Mexican, and every other group that arrived with pride in their heritage. Still, they also raised American flags and wanted their children to be part of the country's future. They became doctors, small business owners, teachers, soldiers. They wanted to be Americans. Now, what we're watching now is not a melting pot. It is isolation by design. And, when you have an isolated enclave, and it's right now, it just seems that it is focused on Islamist communities. I mean, there are many sections of the country, and I often refer to Dearborn, Michigan, just because it is the classic stereotypic example. But these enclaves want to be, run on Sharia law. There is only one law in America. It starts with the Constitution, and it ends with your local statutes. If you're not going to, pledge allegiance to that, then you're not part of America, and you ought not be here. If you want to be part of the American culture, by all means, do it the right way and come be one of us. But if you're going to set up a community that is in direct opposition to everything that we believe, it is very much akin to a foreign invasion. If you reject our beliefs in the Constitution and the idea that this is a nation of laws and not a nation of men, then we're great, man. Like, if you want to be part of that, awesome. But if you're going to reject that in favor of Sharia law or some other type of law, I read a story, I think it was about a year ago, how there was a police station, a Chinese police station that had been set up in San Francisco, and they were policing citizens according to Chinese law. That's not how our country operates. There's only one system of justice here, and it is the Constitution, and it is, our local and state laws. More than 300 fundamentalist Islamic schools now operate full-time across the country. Many use Quran Quran first curricula that require students to spend hours memorizing religious texts before they ever reach math or science. In Dallas, Brighter Horizons Academy, isn't that a fabulous name, enrolls more than 1,700 students and draws federal support while operating on a social model that keeps children culturally violated. What happened to all the cries from the American left about the separation of church and state? Not that I believe in that, but if you're going to apply one standard to Judeo-Christian built schools, then you have to apply it to the other one. And this whole idea that we're not a Christian nation, that we weren't built on Judeo-Christian values, is a lie from the very beginning. This country was founded on Judeo-Christian beliefs. And you can go all the way back to William Bradford and the Puritans at Plymouth. Absolutely, they started this country on Judeo-Christian values. All of our founders, even the least religious among them, which I would make an argument that was probably Benjamin Franklin, he was the guy that insisted on prayer at the Constitutional Convention. So this country was absolutely built and founded on Judeo-Christian values. And so I'm not saying that you have to be a Christian. I'm not saying that you have to worship at all. But what I am saying is if you choose to be part of this country, you have to accept the roots of it. That is, that it was built on Judeo-Christian values. And if you read the Constitution, man, that thing is chock full of Deuteronomy. In fact, some of our founders said that they should have included more of it in the Constitution. But to set up a parallel society and reject our founding principles and reject the principles that undergird this entire society is to reject the country as a whole, which means that you reject the entire system of the entire belief system that this country was founded on. And that is what's happening. Now, then there's the Epic City project in Collins and Hunt counties, 402 acres originally designated only for Muslim buyers. When did that become a thing? When did we set up sections of our country that could only be bought by people who are Muslim? Or, I mean, you don't see that. I mean, if there was a community that said, hey, man, this can only be purchased by a Christian, do you have any conception of the outcry that you would see from the American left? How many lawsuits would be filed by the atheist groups? What is it called? The Center for Anti-Religion. I can't even remember. But I mean, there's so many of these groups that even if there is a whiff of Christianity in a public school, they file a lawsuit. I've got a story here. It's right up on top of the stack of stuff right now that a federal a judge nominated by President Clinton blocks a Texas law requiring the 10 Commandments in school. Why isn't that sort of thing happening in these religious schools? Well, it's either for one of two reasons. Either A, the people in power accept this as an acceptable, way to govern a community, or B, they're just terrified of them. I think it's probably the former out of that. Americans should not hesitate to say that parallel societies are dangerous because they are. Europe tried this experiment, and the results could not be clearer. In Germany, France, and the United Kingdom, entire neighborhoods now operate under their own cultural rules, some openly hostile to Western norms. When citizens speak up, they're branded as bigots for asserting that basic right, the ability to live safely in their own communities without fear from the government. And you can't have a government within a government, which is exactly what all of these cloistered enclaves have become. While this separation widens, another crisis is unfolding. A recent Gallup survey shows that about 40% of American women ages 18 to 39 would leave the country permanently if given the chance. Nearly half of a rising generation, daughters, sisters, soon-to-be mothers, no longer believe that this nation is worth building a future in. And who shapes the worldview of young boys? Their mothers do. If a mother no longer believes America is home, why should her child grow up and defend it? They won't. As Texas goes, so goes America. And as America goes, so goes the free world. If we lose confidence in our own national identity at the same time that we allow separatist enclaves to spread unchecked, the outcome is predictable. Europe is already showing us what comes next. Cultural fracture, political radicalization, and the slow death of national unity. America welcomes Muslims. America defends their right to worship freely. A Muslim who loves the Constitution, respects the rule of law, and wants to raise a family in peace is more than welcome here. But an Islamist movement like Zoran Mamdani in New York, that rejects assimilation, builds enclaves governed by its own religious framework, and treats American law as optional, is not simply another participant in our melting pot. It is a direct challenge to it. If we refuse to call this problem out of fear of being called names, we will bear the consequences, my friends. Europe is already feeling those consequences, rising conflict of the political class paralyzed to admit the obvious. When people feel their culture, safety, and freedom slipping away, they will follow anyone who promises to defend them. History has shown that over and over again. So here's my challenge to you, my friends. Stand up. Speak plainly about the things that you know to be true. Speak out about the things that you believe in the American culture, that you believe in our way of life, that you believe in the Constitution. Do it without fear, because the truth is, most of your neighbors probably feel the same way. Speak to American values, those things that you were taught by, hopefully you were taught by your parents. That's what I do. Years ago, I was helping the debate team at Buffalo High School, and I was still really recovering from what diabetes did to me, which it did a number on me, I'm telling you. But I'm still recovering from it. But anyway, I spent part of my time helping out the debate team. It's one of the things I enjoy right now. I'm teaching a debate class here in Sheridan. But anyway, the coach was putting together gifts for the students, and he said, "Hey, Dave, I got you a coffee mug," and he said, "Do you want your name on it or not?" And I said, "Well, sure. That way nobody's going to take it. Nobody's going to steal a mug that has somebody else's name on it." I don't know that that's necessarily true, but that's what I was thinking. Anyway, the mug was inscribed with a quotation from Albert Einstein, and it said, "Be a voice, not an echo." Now, it took me a while to understand what that meant, that I needed to start the podcast, and so I did that. I chose to be a voice. And I'm challenging you to do the same thing, that if there is something on your mind that you just have to speak, don't do it without fear, whether it's on social media, or you want to start a podcast, or you want to start a Substack, or you want to write a letter to the editor. Do it. Speak without fear and defend American values, because if you don't, who's going to? It's the cliche. In fact, I don't think it's a cliche. I think it's a truth. If not you, whom? If not now, when? When are you going to speak out? You can sit silent and watch the things that you care about be ripped away, or you can stand up and defend American values. Let's go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll keep rolling along with Open Line Friday. Again, if you want to be part of the show, the phone number, 307-374-8989. Give me a call, whatever's on your mind, we'll talk about it. Back in a minute. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage, and you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program. Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. If you want to be part of the show, give me a call. The phone number is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989 is the number here at my desk. Go ahead and give me a call. Anything you want to talk about. And every Open Line Friday, I try to find stories that I think will spark some conversation. Maybe it'll get you in an uproar. Maybe it'll tick you off and you just have to tell me that I'm wrong, whatever the case may be. But if you want to chime in, again, that phone number is 307-374-8989. From the Blaze, liberals rejoice after a Clinton judge blocks a Texas law requiring the 10 Commandments in schools. Now, before I begin this segment, let's just read what the First Amendment says. And it's, we tend to think that the First Amendment to the Constitution protects all speech, and it does, from the government. But as I've told you numerous times on the program, that while you have the freedom of speech, you also have the freedom of the consequences of that speech. So before we begin this conversation, let me just read you what the First Amendment actually says. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. One more time. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So the very first part of it, very first word, it says Congress shall make no law. Now, there are not multiple Congresses in America. There's only one. It's in Washington, D.C. The state of Texas does not have its own Congress, nor does the state of Wyoming have its own Congress. We do have state legislatures, but that's not Congress. It's not what the Constitution was referring to. So it prevents the House of Representatives and the Senate and the President from creating a law prohibiting a law from establishing a religion, that is saying this is the religion of the United States, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, it says nothing about a state legislature doing any of those things, but I don't think that you would win that in court. But here's the problem. Liberals, constantly sue over any ode to any sort of values or religion or morals or anything like that. And one of their biggest targets is the 10 Commandments. And so Texas passed a law that required schools to post the 10 Commandments. Now, you can go across the country to courtrooms, courthouses, all over the place, and you will see the 10 Commandments. You'll see references to them all over the place, even on the Supreme Court building. So let me just read you a couple opening paragraphs here, and then we'll talk about this. Governor Greg Abbott ratified legislation in June requiring all public school classrooms in Texas to display the 10 Commandments. Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick noted that, quote, by placing the 10 Commandments in our classrooms, we are ensuring students receive the same foundational moral compass that guided our state and our country's forefathers. The prospect that children in the Lone Star State should be publicly reminded from September 1 onward to honor their parents and not to lie and not to murder and not to steal and not to commit adultery and not to worship false gods proved intolerable to a number of liberals and the anti-religion activists who promptly filed legal challenges. Quote, these rogue ISD officials and board members blatantly disregarded the will of Texas voters. Okay, so we all think that there is this, that somewhere in the Constitution next to the good and plenty clause is the separation of church and state. That phrase is not in the Constitution, not anywhere in it. In fact, the only place that it comes from is a letter written by Thomas Jefferson to the Danbury Baptists. Now, the Baptists in Danbury, Connecticut, I think it was in Connecticut, wrote a letter to Thomas Jefferson. They were really worried about the Constitution forcing them to become Catholics, that the Constitution was going to set Catholicism as the state religion in America. And Thomas Jefferson wrote back and said, no, you don't understand. There is a wall of separation between church and state. And what he meant was that that Congress, the state, is prevented from meddling in church affairs. Not the reverse, that the church is prevented from having an influence on laws or the way our government operates. And if you need any proof of that, go into the Capitol Rotunda in Washington, D.C., and it is surrounded by paintings on all the way around, and every single one of them has either somebody praying or a Bible, or they are all religious in nature. You can't deny that our founders absolutely thought that religion ought to play a role in government. In fact, and look this one up. This is a great little tidbit here. Do you know where the largest church in Washington, D.C. was? Think about it. Is it a big cathedral? Is it some gigantic building that was built 100 years ago? Kind of. The largest church in Washington, D.C. for over 100 years was the Capitol building itself. In fact, over 14 denominations held services inside the Capitol building. Thomas Jefferson himself was a pew holder in the House of Representatives, in the Capitol building. When they held service, a pew holder, by the way, some churches, maybe they still do, would print a plaque of your name where you usually sit in the in the church. And so Thomas Jefferson had his own seat in there. But the truth is, the largest church in Washington, D.C. was the Capitol building. Now, the courts have, flipped this on its head. And now we seem to think, and a lot of justices and judges seem to think too, that there is this ridiculous separation of church and state when it is not at all. And, often my pal Rod Miller has suggested that we have a debate on my program about this. And, perhaps I should take him up on it. Because I think it would be an epic throwdown. But the truth is, my friends, that the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law. But now a Clinton-era judge has ruled against that. The Clinton judge noted further that while the plaintiffs in the case were a motley crew of parents, some are atheists, agnostic, Christians, Jews, and Hindi, they share one thing in common. The plaintiffs do not wish their children to be pressured to observe, venerate, or adopt the religious doctrine contained in the in the Ten Commandments. That you shouldn't steal, that you shouldn't lie, that you should honor your father and mother, that you shouldn't commit adultery, that you should have no other false gods. That's probably the one that liberals object to, because they often worship false gods at the altar of wokeness and the LGBTQ, LZPWXD agenda. Now, the ruling applies to the 14 school districts across the state. The ACLU, which has defended classroom displays of LGBTQ symbols signifying liberals' rejection of sexual morality, celebrated the ruling. Now, this is an interesting one here, that we can't have the Ten Commandments, but we can have a pride flag hanging in a school, hopefully not in Wyoming, but and that one has all of the hallmarks of a religion. Now, if you're teaching that men can become women and women can become men, a scientific impossibility, then it has to be a religion. that you believe in things that cannot be proven by science. Now, I would argue that science can absolutely prove the things that happened in the Bible. History definitely can. There has never been anything in the Bible that has been disproven by any sort of archaeological evidence. Now, I will agree that a lack of evidence is not evidence itself, but still, there are a lot of things that disprove many of the woke beliefs that a lot of people hold, namely that you can't become a trout or a giraffe or a cat. By the way, in Sheridan, Wyoming, I've seen a number of people parading around with tails. I'm not even kidding. I was walking through Walmart the other day, and this chick came walking by, and she had a tail. Yeah. And now I didn't see any ears, but definitely had a tail. People cannot become, fish or trout, or if you're a woman, you cannot become a man any more than you can become any of those other things. But pride flags, totally acceptable. The ACLU and several other, and this is from The Blaze on June 27th, by the way, the ACLU and several other civil rights groups are supporting a federal lawsuit to strike down a new Louisiana law that mandates the Ten Commandments be displayed in public school classrooms. These civil rights groups claim they are protecting the separation of church and state, which I already told you that's a bunch of hogwash. And that public schools are no place for religious indoctrination. The lawsuit arrives during Pride Month, when hundreds of government organizations, including educational institutions, declare their everlasting devotion to the religion of the LGBTQZXPWDS. Due to a concerted effort by militant activists, the United States has transformed into a country where displaying Pride and Black Lives Matter banners in a classroom is normal, but posting the Ten Commandments in a classroom is completely unconstitutional. Corporations, academia, law enforcement agencies, and media entities turned June into the New America Ramadan, a made-up holiday, by the way, honoring the unofficial state religion. With the culturally ubiquitous celebration of all things queer during the month of June, it can be easy to forget that the current phase of the civil rights revolution is relatively recent. During the Democratic presidential primary of 2008, both Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton declared their steadfast support for traditional marriage. Let me just play it for you. This is great here. Here we go. Listen to this.
I believe that marriage is the union between a man and a woman. Now, for me as a Christian...
Listen to the applause. Yeah! Listen to it.
For me as a Christian, it's also a sacred union.
It's also sacred.
God's
great.
in the mix.
I believe so, too.
I believe that marriage is not just a bond, but a sacred bond between a man and a woman. I have had occasion in my life to defend marriage, to stand up for marriage,
too bad your husband hasn't.
To believe in the hard work and challenge of marriage. So I take umbrage at anyone who might suggest that those of us who worry about amending the Constitution are less committed to the sanctity of marriage or to the fundamental bedrock principle that it exists between a man and a woman going back into the mists of history as one of the foundational
Preach it, sister. Preach it.
Institutions of history and humanity and civilization.
Civilization
and that its
itself.
Primary principal role during those millennia has been the raising and socializing of children for the society into which they are to become adults.
Virtually every one of our colleagues on both sides of the aisle, for that matter, support traditional marriage between a man and a woman. I've been married 37 years. I think the senator from Nevada may have been married longer. I mean, I respect this institution, committed my life to it with my wife, and I think that we all understand that.
So we all understand the institution of traditional marriage, that it is absolutely the bedrock principle upon which we founded our society back into civilization itself, my friends. It's okay. The hypocrisy of the left knows absolutely no bounds, my friends. It is absolutely incredible. And yet, instead of focusing on those things, and remember, that was 2008. That was during the presidential election, Barack Obama's first presidential election. So we're not talking about that long of a time period. It's not even 25 years. It's relatively recent that this whole pride thing has reared its ugly head. And, I have to tell you, my friends, that, whenever it is politically advantageous for Democrats, they absolutely forget everything that they said before in favor of the new dogma. And that's what it is. Dogma, my friends. It is absolutely untrue. We can prove that you can't become a woman any more than you can become a trout if you're a man. And yet we devote an entire month to it. Now tell me, that doesn't have all the hallmarks of religion, and yet you can't have the 10 Commandments in there. And again, let's have the conversation about why, if any of those things are, in some way bad, that somehow, not stealing, not murdering, not committing adultery, not any of those things. Let's have the conversation as to, why you think that those are a bad thing, why we shouldn't teach children those things. Well, the truth is they don't want that. They can't have that in their, in their belief system, because if they do, it's going to undermine their very argument. It's absolute hypocrisy, my friends. And again, it goes back to the Democrats being able to, believe in things that just are fundamentally not true. And they really don't care about any of the, any of the truth behind it, because they're focused on their political agenda. And that's it just goes on and on, my friends. And, let's have that conversation. Why don't you tell me about why you think committing adultery is a good thing, or murder is a good thing, or stealing is a good thing, or not honoring your mother and father. Tell me why those things aren't true. Let's have the conversation and not rely on some principle that a judge ruled on. Now, I'll admit, yeah, we have precedent, and lots of them, that say that there's a separation between church and state. But the truth is, my friends, it's not in there. And it's, by and large, it is the biggest piece of judicial activism that any of us can think of. And, I don't know how we can, how many more ways we can prove that, the left's position on this is absolutely fraudulent. Let's move on to a little bit of local news. I promised you that we were going to talk about some of the things that are happening locally. And here in Sheridan, and this isn't just a Sheridan problem, it is a statewide problem, that we tax our citizens 1%. And, just about every community, not all of them, but just about every community has passed some sort of additional 1% tax, sales tax. And there's this mistaken belief that they can give that money to whomever they want. Now, the Wyoming Constitution is very, very clear. In fact, let me grab a copy of it. I should have been more prepared and not have to reach across the desk to do this. But the Wyoming Constitution specifically prevents you from giving taxpayer money to non-governmental organizations. And it talks about it in several ways. Let's see here. Article 16. Oops, I'm in the wrong one. It's 16, Section 6. Here we go. This is from the Wyoming Constitution. Neither the state nor any county, city, township, town, school district, or any other political subdivision shall loan or give its credit or make donations to or in aid of any individual, association, or corporation, except for necessary support for the poor. Now, we can debate what necessary support for the poor means. We can have that conversation. There's a lot of people across the state who say that, well, that could be anything. We could build them a house. That's support for the poor. That's what the Sheridan County Commissioners claimed at one of their recent meetings. But it's not just that. So there's, let's see here. I think it's Article 3, Section 38. Maybe just let me look real quick, because there's another one. Yeah. 336. Yeah. So it's Article 3, Section 36. Listen to this one. It says, no appropriation shall be made for charitable, industrial, educational, or benevolent purposes to any person, corporation, or community not under the absolute control of the state, nor to any denominational or sectarian institution or association. So there's a couple of different places that is mentioned. And so, I mean, it's clear. You can't give taxpayer money to any Tom, Dick, and Harry that you want to. Yet, there are a number of people, including the Sheridan County Clerk, that say that you can. According to Sheridan Media, an article that was published yesterday, quote, the Sheridan City Council each year accepts applications for funding through the General Purpose Excise Tax Program. The application deadline for GPET funding is a little over 2 weeks away. City Clerk Ashley Foster explained how the GPET works. Foster said applications should be able to clearly articulate the services that they provide. Those that are approved for GPET funds enter into formal service agreements with the city and will report on how those funds are to be used throughout the year. And so the city clerk, Ashley Foster, made one preposterous, completely apocryphal statement when she was talking to Sheridan Media. She said, this is exactly what the voters voted to use this money for, to donate it to private organizations. Except, of course, that is not what the voters approved. This is an image of the very first ballot measure that was approved. And let me read it to you. It says, Ballot Proposition Number 2, shall the Board of County Commissioners for Sheridan County, Wyoming, continue to impose an excise tax of 1% on retail sales for tangible personal property, admissions, and services made within Sheridan County for the purpose of general revenue as set forth in the Wyoming Constitution. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but that ballot measure doesn't say anything at all about donating my money to a private nonprofit organization. It doesn't do that at all. I mean, it doesn't say that at all. In no way could you construe what that ballot measure says to mean that you could give my money away to anybody who applies and to anybody that the city council or the county commissioners thinks is a worthy cause. If the Sheridan County Commissioners or the Sheridan City Council or any other city council in the state think that whatever cause is laudable, well, then they can write their own darn check. Don't force me to write a check for you. The government cannot participate in charity. It is impossible for the government to do that because it's not their money. Charity can only happen from private parties. You see, the government doesn't have its own money. The only way that they get money is by stealing it from you. And by giving it away, that's an absolute abrogation of everything that's in this book. And it's mentioned a couple of different times. And, the way that cities and counties are trying to get around this, and you heard that in the Sheridan Media piece, is that they say, well, those organizations that our city council have deemed worthy become contractors. See, that's how they try to get around this whole you can't loan or give its credit, because they turn them into contractors, you see. They're trying to skirt the Wyoming Constitution. But when it comes down to it, they cannot get away with Section 336, which says that whomever you give this money to has to be under absolute control of the state. They like to focus on one of those. It's necessary support for the poor. But they forget about the other provision, that it has to be under the absolute control of the state. And, it's absolutely wrong. And, I meant to get the soundbite from that Sheridan Media piece so that I could play it for you. But, I got too busy working on show prep, and I understand. There's no excuse, not justifying, just saying. I wanted to have that done for you, and I didn't. All right. So long time ago, I put an embargo, that's the word I'm going to use, on all things Jeffrey Epstein. We haven't talked about Jeffrey Epstein for a very long time on the program, mostly because I was irritated and I didn't want to talk about him anymore. And it felt like program after program after program, it was Epstein this, Epstein that, Epstein didn't kill himself, all of this. I still don't think that he did, by the way. Well, now the legislature has passed a resolution, I guess, and Trump has signed it. And we're going to release the Epstein files. Well, Trump and the White House, they're going on offense against the Democrats implicated in the Epstein files. Quote, after enduring months of attacks from Democrats, President Donald Trump's White House is going on the offensive against Democrats who are mentioned or implicated in the Epstein files. The president announced last week that he supports the release of any remaining files that the Department of Justice has on the pedophile, the sex offender who died in a Manhattan jail cell from apparent suicide. I don't think that he killed himself. On Wednesday afternoon, Attorney General Pam Bondi said that her Justice Department will, quote, follow the law, which passed the Senate on Wednesday, and release the files within the next 30 days while protecting victims. She also said last week that the Justice Department was beginning a new investigation into the possible ties. Now, critics, particularly Democrats, have argued for months that the president was afraid of the release. But what has transpired is that there are a lot of Democrats who are implicated in the Epstein files. One of those was Stacey Plaskett, the congressional delegate from the U.S. Virgin Islands, who was shown to have been texting with Epstein during a hearing on the February 19th testimony for Trump attorney Michael Cohen. The White House, which has argued for weeks that Democrats were using Epstein victims against him, which, by the way, there is no evidence whatsoever at all that Trump has been implicated in any of those. In fact, the Epstein victim that they are alleging Trump had contact with swore that never happened. She later committed suicide, by the way. Now, the thinking on the White House is that the Democrats need to answer for their long-standing ties to Epstein before the country can move on from this. The White House views Democrats as the ones who have shifted on Epstein, and they say Democrats only began to take an interest in the topic once they realized they could score political points. The White House views this as a giant mistake, and so too should Democrats, namely Jasmine Crockett. Now, she went on the House floor and tried to implicate all of, a whole bunch of Republicans, including Lee Zeldin. Here's what she said on the House floor.
Folks who also took money from somebody named Jeffrey Epstein, as I had my team dig in very quickly. Mitt Romney, the NRCC, Lee Zeldin, George Bush, Win Red, McCain Palin, Rick Lazio. I just want to be clear. If this is the standard that we're going to make, just know we're going to expose it all. And just know that the FEC filings, they are available for everybody to review. This is absolutely ridiculous.
Okay, all right. Somebody named Jeffrey Epstein is what she said, but it's clear the implication she's trying to make that all of these people absolutely were involved with Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, they're absolutely involved. Now, yeah, okay, all right. She said somebody involved named Jeffrey Epstein, in her completely fake persona. By the way, she's not from the Dallas ghetto. She went to a private prep school, one of the best prep schools in the country. But whatever. She plays a role. A lot of us do, but, she's a complete fraud. Now, here, it turns out that Lee Zeldin did not get a donation from the pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. He got a donation from a Dr. Jeffrey Epstein. Two completely different people, and he absolutely humiliated Yasmine Crockett while doing so. And I quote, Lee Zeldin humiliates Yasmine Crockett over her embarrassing accusation about Epstein donations. Left-wing firebrand Jasmine Crockett tried to smear Republicans with a bizarre attack about supposed campaign donations from deceased pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, but got humiliated instead. Crockett tried to insinuate, and I think that's absolutely the right word, with the soundbite that I played for you. She tried to insinuate that the disgraced financier had donated to the campaign of former Republican Representative Lee Zeldin of New York, who is now the head of the EPA. Quote, Crockett should get censured for this, and her staff should be fired. Now, let's see here. What did Zeldin say? So Zeldin mocked her in a post on his own social media account. Yes, Crockett. A physician named Dr. Jeffrey Epstein, who is a totally different person than the other Jeffrey Epstein, donated to a prior campaign of mine. No freaking relation, you genius, he added with interspersed clapping emojis. Others hopped on to make fun of Jasmine Crockett. Quote, my team dug into Representative Crockett. Did you know that she died at the Alamo? Stop the presses. Please order immediate testing of the drinking water across the congressional district. Something is seriously wrong with her. Crockett should get censured for this, and her staff should be fired. What a shocking embarrassment to go on the floor with this kind of insane accusation and have the wrong Jeffrey Epstein, replied GOP communications expert Matt Whitlock. Now, Crockett was given the opportunity to walk back her insane accusation of Lee Zeldin on CNN. Here is that one. And I inserted a couple of other video clips in there just so that we could, get the flavor of the things that Crockett was being accused of. Check this out.
I want to correct the record on the people saying I never said that it was that Jeffrey Epstein, just so that people understand when you make a donation, your picture is not there.
Folks who also took money from somebody named Jeffrey Epstein, as I had my team dig in very quickly. Mitt Romney, the NRCC, Lee Zeldin.
And because they decided to spring this on us in real time, I wanted the Republicans to think about what could potentially happen, because I knew that they didn't even try to go through the FEC. So my team, what they did is they Googled, and that is specifically why I said a Jeffrey Epstein. Unlike Republicans, I at least don't go out and just tell lies.
Lee Zeldin.
Because it was not the same one, that's fine. But when Lee Zeldin had something to say, all he had to say was it was a different Jeffrey Epstein. He admitted that he did receive donations from a Jeffrey Epstein.
In an embarrassing fashion for you. All right, I've had enough
Lee
of this
Zeldin.
fraud.
Now, have I dug in to find out who this doctor is? I have not. So I will trust and take what he says. Is that it?
Because I don't want to embarrass myself anymore. She's just a complete fraud and an embarrassment to the U.S. Congress. Let's go ahead and take our last break. And when we come back, we'll finish up Open Line Friday. Give me a call, 307-374-8989. Be back in a minute. Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely, and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country, and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way.
Cowboy state politics is only going to get stronger. This program is expanding faster than I ever thought it would. The most recent edition is The Outrider, the newsletter of Cowboy state politics. The first version went out yesterday, and it has had tremendous success. Welcome back to the program, my friends. I'm David Iverson, your host for today. I learned something new. Every day I try to learn something new. One of the things yesterday was that I can throw comments from people that are listening to the program onto the screen. There's one from Jerry Jackson. God bless our republic. Yes, sir, Mr. Jackson. I absolutely agree. Now, during the break, I did a little Googling of myself. You know, I wanted to find out if I have taken any money from some notorious figures, and I didn't find that. But what I did find out from AI is that I have been an incredible journalist since 1986, and that I've received multiple awards in journalism. So says AI. The truth is, I was too busy learning how to fish in 1986. But, maybe Jasmine Crockett ought to go to AI. She might have more success than relying on her staff. From the Daily Wire, Trump just beat the last 3 presidents on one key issue. Now, often presidents in their second term, and, so Trump had a little break in the middle there, but but presidents in their second term tend to focus on foreign policy, and Donald Trump has been knocking it out of the park pretty much everywhere in the world. Now, the Ukraine-Russia thing seems to be a little bit more persistent than some of the other conflicts, but really his foreign policy has absolutely been incredible, and Americans are noticing. From the Daily Wire, CNN data guru Harry Enton said on Wednesday that President Donald Trump was blowing his competition out of the water, both Republicans and Democrats, when it came to his approval rating with regard to foreign policy. Enton spoke with CNN anchor John Berman about the latest numbers, which show that Trump, nearly 10 months into his second term, has a 43% approval rating on his foreign policy positions. Berman asked for context, wondering how Trump stacked up against the past 3 presidents, no doubt hoping that his messiah, the cross-legged Obama, would have done a little bit better. Not so much. Harry Enton said, "This is one of the areas in which Donald Trump is performing significantly better than he was in term 1. And Enton explained. In fact, you know what? Let me just play that for you. Because, Trump performs better than just about every president. And, there's really no competition to it. But here's what was said on CNN.
This is one of the areas in which Donald Trump is performing significantly better than he was in term 1. One of his best issues relative to term 1. What are we talking about? Approve of Trump on foreign policy at this point in term 1. Look, Donald Trump was just at a 35% approval rating. Up like a rocket. We're talking about 43% now. That's an 8-point rise. On the net approval rating, we're talking about a double-digit rise. The American people like much more of what they're seeing from Donald Trump in foreign policy in term 2 than they did in term number 1.
So often presidents in their second term, usually later in their second term, frankly, will turn to foreign policy. So how does President Trump compare to past presidents in their second terms?
This to me is one of the most interesting data points, because normally when we look at these data points, we see that Trump is doing worse than other presidents. But on this one, he is doing significantly better, because take a look here. All right, 21st century foreign policy approval rating at this point in term 2. George W. Bush was down at 36%. Barack Obama was at 37%. Look at this. Donald Trump actually leads the pack at 43%. Donald Trump has a higher foreign policy approval rating at this point in a second term than any other president who served their entire second term in the 21st century. This is something I think Donald Trump really likes to look at, because the bottom line is this: presidents like to build their legacies off of foreign policy, and at this particular point, the American people like much more of what Donald Trump's doing on foreign policy than either of the 2 other 21st century presidents who served served 2 terms.
Good chances of being screen grabbed and framed and taken to the Oval Office very shortly.
No doubt. Well, the truth is, my friends, that Donald Trump performs better in polling than a lot of different people, and it's because he's doing a great job. And I don't, I'm not saying that because I'm a Republican. It's demonstrably true. The economy's doing better. We led the show with the jobs numbers that were released. Now, I mean, that's just a snapshot, so it doesn't tell you the entire story when it comes to the Trump presidency and jobs. But I mean, man, he's just knocking it out of the park pretty much everywhere. And okay, so there are ups and downs, and his approval rating his overall approval rating is down a little bit. But that's to be expected. Almost all presidents have a lower approval rating closer to the midterms than they do when they get elected or when they leave office. And so, I mean, there are ups and downs in a lot of this polling, but the truth is, he's doing way better than any of his predecessors. And who can, and even the Democrats, like the honest ones, can't really deny that. Now, here's one that just will never, ever, ever go away. From justthenews.com, Ohio resolution calls for federal term limits, and this is about the Convention of States. And I quote, a proposal for a federal convention of states to change the Constitution received its second hearing in the Ohio Senate on Wednesday. Hopefully that thing gets beaten on the floor because it's a dangerous idea. But here's what Just the News says. A group of Ohio lawmakers wants to change the U.S. Constitution to establish congressional term limits. A proposal to ask for a federal convention of states to change the Constitution received its second hearing in the Ohio Senate. Sponsoring Senators Therese Gavarone Bowling Green and Jane Timken of Jackson Township are using one of the country's longest-serving congresswomen as an impetus for the Senate Joint Resolution 6. Representative Marcy Kaptur of Ohio has been reelected to serve 22 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives, representing Northwest Ohio since January 3rd of 1983. That's too long, according to the two state senators. Quote, in 1982, Marcy Kaptur won her first election, being elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in what was considered to be an upset. Okay, whatever. Tired of quoting from that. But there's a good reason why you shouldn't be in favor of term limits. Now, I understand it's a pretty seductive idea. And especially when you look at people like Nancy Pelosi. I mean, God, she's been in there for, I don't know, over a century. I really have no idea how long she's been in there. But she's wreaked a lot of damage while she's been in there. There's no denying that. But the truth is, why is it that you or I or the Congress or anybody else should be able to tell Nancy Pelosi's district who they want to vote for? Whether it's whether it's because she's been in there, you think she's been in there too long, or she tore up President Donald Trump's State of the Union address, or whatever. The truth is, we already have term limits, my friends. They're called elections. And if you think that our founders were so oblivious to the ways of men that they forgot that people would just run for office continually and they would, be in office perpetually. If you think that they don't thought about that, you're absolutely nuts. Of course they did, but they didn't include it because we have elections and because you shouldn't be able to take away the voice of the people in any given district. In fact, in Article 5 itself, and this is an interesting argument here, one that I just thought of. Of course, I did because, anyway, it's my show. But in Article 5 itself, one of the only two things that you can't do is deprive a state of suffrage in the Senate. It's pretty close to a direct quote from Article 5 of the Constitution. All right, so if you can't do that for a state, why should you be able to do that for an individual citizen? Now, states can do a heck of a lot of things. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that a state can't set up term limits. We have them here in Wyoming for the governor, though the liberals in the state want to claim that we don't. It's absolutely there. The Supreme Court hasn't ruled on it, and therefore, the governor is limited to 2 terms. And we did pass an amendment after FDR died that the president is limited to 2 terms. Why the president and not everybody else? Well, first, our founders were very concerned about the consolidation of executive power. That a president that's in there for 1 term is going to amass a lot of power, but if they're in there for 2, It's a tremendous amount of power because, just look, for example, at what happened during the government shutdown. Trump took great advantage of that, got rid of a lot of federal employees because when the government is shut down, well, it's up to the president to pretty much run everything. And so our founders knew, and I say founders, but after FDR died, a constitutional amendment was proposed to limit the president to 2 terms. Okay, so that is different. It's a co-equal branch of government than the legislature. So you might say, well, why? Why should we not have term limits on them? Well, because you shouldn't be able to deprive voters of who they want representing them. And you might be able to use the same argument for the presidency, but I see them as 2 different things. We already have term limits, my friends. And, if you want a government to completely go off the rails, install term limits. And let me give you an example. So let's say that there's 3 terms. That's no more than that. What do you think is going to happen in that 3rd term? What do you think that representative or senator is going to do? They're not constrained by an election. They don't have to answer to their voters. Not that a lot of them do right now anyway, because they have a lot of their voters snowballed. But what do you think they're going to do in that last term? There is nothing stopping them. For example, Mark Gordon right now, he's in his, last term. What is stopping him from, there's nothing. He's done a lot of crazy stuff, climate change stuff, all his votes on the slip board. Look at the budget that I just mentioned in the podcast from Wednesday. That guy is nothing can touch him because he doesn't have to worry about an election. And if you want that to happen to the U.S. Congress, install term limits. And here's the last thing that I'll say on this whole term limit thing. If you want a dysfunctional Congress, now, nobody is going to, I don't think anybody would argue that our Congress is pretty dysfunctional right now. Well, what is going to happen if senators and representatives are term limited? Well, a lot of the expertise and way that things are done, and maybe this is a good thing, but a lot of the knowledge of the federal bureaucracy goes away because it takes a while to learn that sort of stuff. All right, so term limits are bad, and so is a convention of states. It is absolute fantasy that anybody is going to be constrained to those things listed in the resolution. And as far as I can tell, this one from Ohio is just about term limits. But the truth is, and Mark Meckler has said this himself, that once a convention gets going, there's nothing stopping it because the very first thing that they're going to do is set the rules. And they're going to change them to whatever they want. It's not going to be constrained to the things listed in the resolution. And why do we know that? Because the same sort of thing happened at the only other constitutional convention that we have ever had. The Constitution, the first one. The very first thing they did is change the rules. They had no authority to write the Constitution. In fact, the reason that they were going into convention was to revise the Articles of Confederation. Well, everybody knew, and thank God that we got the Constitution out of that, but they didn't have any authority to write it. The very first thing they did is they said, we're going to do that. We're out with the Articles of Confederation. We're redoing the whole thing, which is why the president of the Constitutional Convention, George Washington, insisted on absolute secrecy, because if it got out that the guys in the Constitutional Convention were completely doing something new, it would short-circuit the entire process. So don't tell me that this convention of states is going to be constrained to any 1 or 2 or 3 topics. It won't be. And one more thought on it. If you worry about money in politics, imagine how much foreign influence is going to be applied to said convention of states. If the U.S. says, hey, we're going to open up the Constitution and we're going to change a few things, what are the rest of the countries in the world going to do? There are many countries that already think that they should absolutely have a right to vote because the decisions made here in America affect countries overseas. And so there's a lot of countries that advocate at the United Nations that say we should have a say in American policy. What do you think they're going to do, given the opportunity to influence a change to the U.S. Constitution? They're going to dump so much money into that thing. There's going to be so much influence either way, and there isn't going to be anything that you can stop it. Last, as Antonin Scalia once said when he was asked about a convention, he said no. In fact, he said, whoa, no, I wouldn't be in favor of that. You don't know what you would get out of it. It's a ridiculous idea. And I mean, I've done lots of episodes on this. And in fact, there's one that was done pretty recently. Let me see if I can find it real quick for you. And I'll tell you what the title is so you can go back and listen to it. There was a town hall put on by Mark Meckler and Rick Green. Mark Meckler is one of the guys that founded Convention of States Action. And he held a town hall here in Sheridan. And I'm telling you, man, it was a pretty good sales pitch. Absolutely, it was. And if you didn't know better, you would assume that he was absolutely telling you the truth. But there was quite a few things in there that that just weren't true. That just weren't true at all. Let's see here. Where is it? Maybe it was a lot longer ago than I thought. Hold on here. Anyway, I'll look for it while we're continuing on with the program, and and you know what? I'll post it to my social media site. How's that? Because I'm having a little bit of trouble finding it right now. Anyway, so Convention of States, really bad idea. Don't get involved with it. Not going to end well. So the Maryland man, remember him? Oh, yeah, he's just a dad. You know, sure, he's a member of MS-13. Sure, he's implicated in a whole bunch of different crimes. And yeah, a couple of judges have said that he needs to be thrown out of the country, that he could be deported at any time. Well, it turns out that there's one more crime that you can add to him. He's also a pedophile, or alleged pedophile, excuse me. From the Daily Wire. Kilmar Abrego Garcia has been accused of sending porn to a teen as evidence emerges in his smuggling case. And I quote, the Trump administration is expected to present new evidence in the human smuggling case against Kilmar Abrego Garcia, alleging that he exchanged pornographic videos and images with a teenage girl. A witness is expected to come forward who claims that Garcia tried to recruit her to join his smuggling operations and both solicited and sent her pornographic messages, according to a Thursday court filing. The woman was 15 years old when the explicit messages were allegedly exchanged, while Abrego Garcia was 25. There are several individuals who are allegedly involved in the human smuggling ring that are yet to come forward to uphold that he had MS-13 membership. The allegations against Garcia further undermine the image presented by Democrats who have made him the face of their campaign against Trump's deportation effort. He's been labeled the Maryland man. And even won himself a visit from Democratic senator at the detention center where he was being held. It was largely ignored that he had a long criminal record, a gang affiliation, and was illegally in the country. The Trump administration brought him back in on the human smuggling charges stemming from the 2022 Tennessee traffic stop. Body camera footage of the incident showed Abrego Garcia behind the wheel with 8 other passengers in tow. Although the group had been on the road for days, making the trek from Texas to Maryland, the car had no luggage inside. The responding officers also noted that Garcia was likely hauling these people for money, probably to Maryland. So, he's just a dad. Just a Maryland guy just trying to make his living, who is also a gang member. He has the MS-13 tattoos on his fingers. And so now he's obviously been grooming a little girl. Isn't that great? Well, we've got, about 7 or 8 minutes left in the program. And I just love pointing out the hypocrisy of the left. And one of them, though, and I used to play videos of Joy Reid, that's what we're talking about, on the program a lot, torturing you. I've since she's not on TV anymore, she's just got her own dumb podcast. But anyway, she takes a transphobic stance on locker rooms after previously comparing trans critics to Nazis. Now, Joy Reid came out against the transgender-identifying males in women's locker rooms after previously calling critics of the transgender movement Nazis. Yeah, that's people like you and me who don't think that men have any business being in a women's locker room. The former PMS-NBC host made the surprising comments while opining about an incident at a Los Angeles gym where a woman expressed her outrage at seeing male genitalia in the locker room. Quote, I can see why she would have gone and reported it to management. Does she not have the right to be at least uncomfortable with that situation? Not according to what Joy Reid has said before. So first, here is Joy Reid before. This is, how she thought we should handle all these transgender things. But here's what she said to critics of keeping men out of women's locker rooms.
In fact, there are more kids who have been exposed to gun violence, estimated at 3 million, than there are transgender Americans of all ages in total. Targeting trans people isn't new. It is an age-old tradition, which Nazi Germany did with brutally violent ends in the 1930s. While the Supreme Court refuses to do anything about weapons of war in schools, today they seemed inclined to uphold Tennessee's ban on gender-affirming care for minors.
Yeah. So before, if you're opposed to, men invading women's spaces and playing in women's sports because you're a loser of a man, then you're a Nazi, according to Joy Reid. But, she's kind of changed her tune now since PMS NBC got rid of her. Now she thinks that, you should report that stuff, and women absolutely have a right to privacy in their own locker room. Check this out.
This is nothing against trans anybody. What it's saying is, I turn around and I see a penis in front of me inside of the room. Yeah. I would probably go to management and say, wait a minute, why is there a naked man in this room?
Progressive commentator.
Yeah, why would you say that? I mean, why wouldn't you ask if there was a man in a women's locker room? I mean, of course, before she said that if you do that, you're a Nazi. It's just the hypocrisy of the left, my friends. None of their ideas actually work in the real world. And the only way that they can get their point across is by lying to you. Well, that'll pretty much do it for today's edition of the program. Make sure that you don't miss a lot of things to remind you of. So if you have not received the issue number 1 of the Outrider, then it means you're not signed up. So go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, and put your email address in the pop-up, hit submit, and it'll send me an email, and I'll get you put on the list for the Cowboy State Politics newsletter. It's called the Outrider. Also, don't miss the Cowboy State Politics podcast. Wednesdays was a barn burner about the governor's budget. I've got a lot of comments about that one, and you should really go check it out. And so don't miss that one. And don't forget about Weekend Update, which will be published tomorrow. So for now, from the base of the Bighorns, my friends, at the Cowboy State Politics studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. Have a good weekend, my friends. I'll be back on Weekend Update tomorrow. Have a good weekend, my friends.